everyone, and welcome back to the Bay State Golf Podcast. I am your host, as always, Sean Melia. Today's podcast is going to be a solo pod where I cover some highlights thus far from my quest to play every golf course in Massachusetts. This was a question from Kent Paisley, who is a friend of mine. He asked it on Instagram when I threw out a request for some questions that I could answer in some different places. Kent is a LPGA beat writer for Golf Digest. We worked together at amateurgolf.com, and I thought it was a really good question, one that I hadn't really thought of as far as the scope of the entire experience. A lot of people will ask about the best course I've played or things of that nature, and I thought putting together some highlights and some things that just stood out over almost 4 years of doing this. I started in June of 2020. Would be a good exercise. I also think that doing this will help me give people a little bit of background about how this whole thing started and why I'm where I am and what I'm doing. Because my life changed a little bit in 2019 when I decided to leave teaching and try to write. So kind of give some background on that as well, which is another question that was asked on that Q&A request on Instagram. Before we jump into the highlights, I just want to kind of ask, if you are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, if you're watching on YouTube, wherever you are, please subscribe. It's a huge help. My goal is to have one of these out every Friday. It might be just me talking to a microphone. Some Fridays and other Fridays, maybe getting a guest. It's taxing and tough sometimes to find guests or schedule time with guests. I do it for 2 other podcasts, the amateurgolf.com podcast. Go listen to that one as well. And the New England Golf Journal podcast. So I've got a couple different podcasts. So this is kind of a nice one to have a little bit of freedom and just hop on and talk about whatever's on my mind. Hopefully find some friends and some guests as time goes, but trying not to be tied to having a guest in order to post something up here. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for following me on Instagram. I run baystate_golf, where you can find a ton of my photos and videos and thoughts on the golf courses I've played so far. BayStateGolf.com is another place that you can find kind of everything in a more organized way, because Instagram, it can be tough to find a golf course I've played. I post all my reviews on that website, so you can kind of scroll through and find them more easily than what can be sometimes a mess on Instagram with more than just specific reviews of golf courses. And then finally, I have a newsletter that I release every Friday. So Friday's kind of the day I aim to have a bunch of things done, wrap up the week. It's always a good thing to have something just to put a bow on the week, personally and professionally. So you can find that at, I'm going to put the link in the bio because it's on Beehive. Sadly, I have to have it in a different place than where I have my website. So my newsletters all live at beehive.baystategolf.com. And I will put the link in the show notes to that if you are interested in subscribing. And I always write something and share some personal favorites from the week, what I've had to eat, drink, what I've been watching, what I've been listening to, what I've been reading. So you can find me there as well. So I'm in a lot of different places. Appreciate you finding me in all of them. All right, let's get to some highlights. I picked out 5, and I have a 6th as an honorable mention, which is there because there are some rounds I've been able to play outside of Massachusetts that have also kind of been great, and were, partly because of this quest. So let's get to my first highlight. These are in no particular order, either chronologically or otherwise. I just kind of recorded 5 quick thoughts that really popped into my head. I wanted to do this in a way that wasn't me culling through a bunch of things, but I think highlights in a lot of ways are what came to mind right away. So these 5 things came to mind as I sat down and just did a brain dump, and they stood out for sure. The first one is getting to play the U.S. Open routing at the country club in May of 2022. So this is kind of one that ties into what the heck I'm doing, kind of as a golf writer, and where my words live and where you can find them. Started writing and getting paid to write on a regular basis. I'm a staff writer there, host the podcast there, run the Instagram account. And this opportunity was really strictly because the US Open was a home game for me, living in Boston. Everyone else who works and writes for amateurgolf.com is based in California, or at least far enough away that they didn't have a 20-minute drive to the golf course. So the opportunity came up that I could play the country club during media day, hosted by the USGA. I had no idea what to expect. It was a really cool day. I had played the normal everyday routing at the country club in August of 21, checked it off the list and figured that would be the end of my trips to the country club. And if I did go back, I'd be playing the same normal everyday guest or member routing. For the Open, they always blend in a few holes from their extra 9 called the Primrose. And so getting to go and play the golf course about 5 or 6 weeks before the US Open was actually hosted there was really an incredible experience. I got to play with the club president. I got to play with Andy Johnson of Friday Golf. And, just kind of being in a place where there were a bunch of people who I read and listen to and watch over the course of the day. And then getting to play a golf course with Andy Johnson was extraordinary. He, was playing his persimmon driver and his old set of irons, and he had a PT Titleist 3-wood in his bag that he tried to hit a couple times off some tricky fairway lies, and just that day was amazing. The golf course obviously was outstanding, and to just experience it, play it, and see what the pros were in for 6 weeks down the road. The thing, having then gotten to go and cover the event and be there for, I went all 7 days. I didn't have to, but I did, and it was. I was surprised at how much firmer the golf course was in May than it was in June. We had a little bit of rain. It's obviously coming off winter, and just the ground is naturally a little bit harder, but we played a firmer golf course in a lot of places than the pros did in June. And so that's highlight number one. Just a great day, and getting to play with someone who knows a ton about golf course architecture, and someone who I listen to a bunch and read a bunch of his work, to play with Andy Johnson. Out of the blue, he ended up playing with me because he had RSVP'd for the event and showed up, and they just had to plug him in somewhere where there was an opening, and my foursome happened to have a cancellation last minute, so they slipped Andy into my group. He was a little bit annoyed to be in this group, not for any particular reason or because of the 3 other people in the group, but him and Brendan Porath were there, and I think they were hoping, of course, as coworkers, to be able to play together and maybe film some content as they're on the golf course, and said they were split up. The funny part is, in the back of my mind, as we were walking to the first tee and he's kind of looking around and wishing he could play with Brendan, I did not want to relinquish my spot playing with Andy because I was very excited about this. It turns out that if I had made that choice, Brendan was paired with all the no laying up guys. So any way I sliced it that day, I would have either played like I did with Andy, or I could have been the martyr and said, "Hey, Andy, I'll switch with Brendan," and I would have been playing with Solly, and I think Tron was there. But some of the new no laying up guys were all there too, filming and playing golf too. So it was kind of a surreal day. So that's number one. The second highlight kind of was born from the first highlight, as far as just the way my mind works and the things I think about. This is more recent, but I got to play and spend another day, another kind of media connection. The New England Golf Journal was invited to go to Willow Bend Country Club. They were kind of inviting media to see the golf course. Darren Clarke was being recognized as an ambassador of the Southworth kind of development company. He lives at Abaco in the Caribbean, which is also owned by the same development company. Southworth is based basically in Willow. That was their original golf course, original development, and they've got a bunch around the country and around the world now. And Darren Clarke lives at one of those, so he's kind of built a relationship with them. He wears Abaco stuff if you see him playing PGA Champions or Tour Champions now. And so I showed up to this knowing Darren Clarke was going to be there, knowing that we were going to have some time to have lunch with him. I didn't know what the setup was going to be like. As far as is this going to be a press conference? Are we going to be sitting in a room and he's going to have a microphone and we get to shoot questions at him? Is it going to be more laid back than that? Is it going to be kind of lame and he doesn't even really want to be there? It was a great day, and it surpassed expectations because he did end up playing 6 holes with each of the 3 groups of the media who were all there. So that was another just kind of incredible day to play with a guy on the morning that the Ryder Cup American captains picks were made. So picking his brain about the Ryder Cup and when he was captain and when he was a captain's pick and winning the Ryder Cup and losing the Ryder Cup, and hearing him talk about the moment at the K Club on the first tee when he was playing just weeks after his wife had died from cancer. And that kind of emotional experience was way beyond some of the cool golf stuff that I got to see as I played golf with him for an hour and a half. So that was crazy. He showed up, he plopped down we were all having lunch at this kind of long table in the clubhouse at Willow Bend. And he was 2 days off of playing in an event in Detroit where he was in one of the last groups. I think Paul Guido's 5-putted or 4-putted, ended up losing, and Clarke was in this group. So Clarke was kind of in the hunt as well, and was kicking himself for hitting some shots down the stretch because he was trying to chase the lead. And then Guido's kind of threw up all over himself. And so he's like hearing him talk about that, but he's also just really pleasant, and telling stories and talking about fishing, which is his kind of second love. And it was a great day. I've written about this as well, but I was the guy in our Pro-Am group. After playing, we played the 7th hole, which is a kind of a nice little par 3. Wish it was better. Wish you could see the water, but that's the trees were in the way. That's a story for a different day. I played that one. I almost hit a cold shank with my first tee shot in front of Darren Clarke, hit a 7-iron, and then hit a really scuffy chip on and 2-putted for bogey. And then I got myself settled. I hit a good tee shot on the 7th or on the 8th, I'm sorry, and had like the shot you don't want, a 50-yard wedge off. Really, this Willow Bend is very well maintained, very crispy, tight fairway. 50 yards, I pull out my wedge and I hit it 10 yards in front of me. Just got a lot of earth, and then put another one down because I didn't put another one down. I'm sorry. I just walked the 10 yards to the ball and then attempted to hit another one and did the opposite and hit no earth and hit about the top 7th of the ball and went rocketing into a bunker. I managed to get out of the bunker and make a bogey. But after my second horrendous wedge shot, he gathered us all around and gave us a quick lesson. So I was that guy in the Pro-Am with our group, which was mildly embarrassing and humbling. But it was a great day. Afterwards, he had a Guinness with the group and hung out and answered some questions and let us interview him a little bit. And that's when we talked about his Ryder Cup experience. And he talked about junior golf and what he would encourage juniors to do, which was, interestingly, learn how to hit it as hard and as far as possible. But then his second suggestion was you also have to know how to chip and putt. So an amazing, amazing day down at Willow Bend playing with Darren Clarke, a really, really good guy, exactly how you would picture him being, just as far as, some people you see on TV or you get, is this a persona? And it just wasn't. Watching him operate with people he knew, with the waitresses at Willow Bend, with the bartender, with, the management who are all there, like, they all adored him. He knew their names. Just even some of the members came over and said hi to him because he's there not frequently, but he's there frequently enough. And I'm sure he gets kind of approached by people all the time when he's there. So that is number 2. So we're going to go as the third one in a different direction. We're going to go to a 9-hole golf course called Maynard Golf Course. Once known as Maynard Country Club when I was a kid. Little 9-holer. I had always I was trying to figure out when I started this quest where I was going to put Maynard. I thought it could be the last course. That would be kind of great. That's a long way away. And truthfully, in the back of my mind, I thought Maynard Golf Course might not be a golf course by the time I finish my quest. In 2028, 29, 2030. I'm not trying to rush through this. I'm trying to be realistic, and I figured people ask how long it's going to take. And it, 8, 9, 10 years has been my answer all the time. And I think we're probably going to be pretty close to 10. So Maynard was always one of those places that I was trying to figure out, and people were asking, what's going to be, where are you going to finish? And I started thinking, like, I'm going to finish where I finish. And I think part of the finish isn't necessarily going to be the place, but maybe the people who are there and the people who I've already played with and had experiences with and all that stuff, which I will get to in one of my other highlights. But I thought, let's make Maynard my 100th course. I wanted to make it something where I invited people out. So I did. It was a Saturday in May. A lot of people were busy, or people just didn't want to come play Maynard Golf Course, which I can't really blame them for. But I've rounded out a foursome, and it turned out to be a really kind of crummy day. One of the few rainy days in May. If you remember last May of 2023, it might have been the best month to play golf of the entire year, particularly kind of in the spring, summer window of time. September and October were pretty great, but we got a lot of rain throughout the whole year, especially on the weekends. And this was one of those weekends. So Maynard is a 9-hole golf course. It is where I grew up playing. It is really the first kind of big, quote unquote, big golf course that I played. I learned how to play in California, but I did not I did not hit balls on a golf course until we moved back to the Boston area. My lessons were all kind of at indoors. We would go to driving ranges. But as far as, a full golf course, Maynard was the first one that I had played. So it holds a kind of a special place in my heart. It was my babysitter back when I was a kid. My mom would drop me off in the morning, late morning. And I remember watching for her headlights coming down the street in the dark. And that's kind of what I would do before I was old enough to get a job. I would just play golf there. I had some friends who I played golf there with. And the beauty of this was one of my friends, Phil, was able to join me for this round. He was someone who I played a lot of golf at Maynard with growing up. We would always joke. He loved to eat, had a great appetite, phenomenal athlete. I think he was just always on the move, played D1 tennis at Brown. And he would buy chicken fingers, onion rings, and wasn't always the most willing sharer. So, kind of those little memories, playing 9 holes, going in from the heat, having a Coke and some chicken fingers, and watching Phil get more food than us and and eat it all. But being back there was, a highlight. It was also a little bit sad because it is a place that has kind of been untouched by time, if that's the right phrase. It felt similar in many ways than it did when I was playing it in the mid to late 90s. I hadn't been back in maybe 10 or 15 years. I used to work at a summer camp, and sometimes we'd go play golf after work, and that was where we'd go. But I had not been back, I don't think, since then. So at least 15 years. The clubhouse is run down. Everything was kind of closed. The lights were off. It was a quiet Saturday because there was rain in the forecast, and it was just a kind of cold, gloomy day. My friend Dan joined me for the first 9. So the two of us played together for the front 9, which is the only 9. And the plan was that Phil and his son were going to meet us, and we'd play 9 more, and we'd play 18 holes, and it would be great. And kind of as we were going, it started raining harder and harder. And I texted Phil and said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to get my 9 holes in. It's raining. If you and Dylan do not want to be out here, that is completely fine." And Phil texted back. He said, "We're on our way," because Dylan would not let me say no. Dylan loves golf. I've played golf with Dylan at Maynard, and we've also played pitch and putt at Stone Meadow in Lexington. And he had to be basically carried away from the putting green at Stone Meadow. We finished playing pitch and putt, and he wanted to putt around for a few minutes. And I thought, this kid is amazing. And so I went over, and he was putting, and I was just chipping, and Phil and I were chatting, and finally Phil's like, "It's time to go," and Dylan did not want to leave. And in this case, we only played, I think we played 4-5 holes. And then we played 5 holes. We played 1, 2, 3, 4, and the rain was coming down. It was pretty miserable, and we were walking and ill prepared. And the 9th hole comes back up after you play 4. So we played 4, and then we played the 9th hole, and we were done. And once again, Dylan was wondering why we were finishing, because there was more golf to be played. So just, as the 100th course, not at some prestigious golf course, a place that I made a choice to be at for a number of reasons. Nostalgia kind of prevailed. And then to play it with a friend who I played there with, 25 years ago, even longer. I mean, I'm 40 now, so that's 28 years ago. We were 10, 11. Great day. Very different than playing golf at the country club and at Willow Bend with Darren Clarke. I think that's the beauty of golf, and that's what kind of makes this whole journey worth doing. And I think for me, that's kind of leads into the 4th highlight, which isn't necessarily a specific highlight, but 4 years ago, there were a lot of people who either had been in my life and had kind of drifted off, because that's what happens, whether it's high school friends, college friends, acquaintances, and a lot of those, people kind of come and go out of your life. That's how life works. You've got your core group of friends, and sometimes that even shifts over time. And this kind of whole quest has brought a bunch of people back into my life just through golf, which is pretty neat, just as far as hearing from people I went to high school with who I had not heard from in 10, 15 years, who are playing golf, or who are interested in golf, or who have been kind of reinvigorated to play golf or try playing golf because of this quest that I'm on. And that's really neat. And then the other kind of side is just the amount of new people I have met, and friendships I have made. And, to call out maybe 2 specific people who I met, and kind of one connected me with the other. So the story and having the 2 of them as my 2 examples makes sense here. But I met Kevin Van Cleef, who was just a dude on Twitter, as I was also a dude on Twitter, and the golf Twitter world is rather small. And I knew he was a local guy, and he was working at Old Sandwich and on the grounds crew there. And I thought, I want to reach out to this guy. Maybe he wants to be a guest on my podcast. And he was, and we had a great whatever 30, 45-minute conversation. You can go, oh man, it's 2.5 years old now at this point. And then after we were done, he said, you should meet Jed. And Jed is the historian at Plymouth Country Club. In my mind, I was picturing some kind of old guy, and we get connected and have no idea what he looks like. And then we get on a Zoom call because he's going to be a guest on my podcast, and he is my age. And we start kind of chatting, and he says, well, where do you live? And I said, I live in Charlestown. He said, oh, so do I. And then we give our street name, and it turns out we are living on the same street 2 blocks away from each other. And, the 3 of us have played a handful of golf together. We've done the double dip. We've played in Kevin's, the Crocker, which is at Catuit, where Kevin has played. Kevin has introduced me to Cape Cod Country Club and Catuit, 2 pretty great places that are very close to each other down on Cape Cod. And, so like just having new people, I am in this world where I have people reaching out to me on Instagram to play golf. I've played golf with people who, just out of the kindness of their heart, just invite me to play their private golf course, which is just crazy. And I have, people who go out of their way to just connect me with people because they know I'm trying to do this. It is a incredibly humbling kind of experience to choose to do some sort of project like this. And when I started it, I just figured, I'm just going to figure it out. And it's going to take me 8, 9, 10 years. It's not something I'm rushing to do. But, I was partly in the middle of a pandemic and trying to find some sort of meaning out of everything. I had left teaching in 2019. I figured I'd have a year, maybe 2 to write and figure out like what I wanted to do with the rest of my time on this planet. And reading Tom Coyne's course called Ireland, and reading James Dodson's Final Rounds and Range Bucket List, where I'm reading about these guys who love golf, who found purpose in the game, came up with maybe some ridiculous ideas and travel and projects and just went for it and created something out of it. And I didn't know what I was going to create. I knew I was going to take pictures. I knew I was going to write about it. I didn't think it would get to a point where I would have like all these new people in my life. And maybe that was naive on my part. But it is definitely really incredible that there's all these new people and people I've reconnected with, or people who have felt like, hey, I'm following along and I'm kind of interested in getting back into golf, or I want to play golf again. And that's amazing. And then obviously the people who have been my friends and my golfing friends in my life for my entire life, whether it's Phil at Maynard, or Paul Burke, who's been on this podcast a number of times, 4 times every year at least, to talk about the majors. Another friend, Elliot, who I've written about, and his dad who passed away, in May of 2019. And his dad and my dad were very close, and we went on a bunch of golf trips together over the years. So you get like all these. There's foundations that get strengthened that have been, and then there's new friends that are built, and new friendships that are built, and kind of reconnecting with former acquaintances and friends. It's been pretty stunning. Then the last one, I think, kind of stands in contrast to the people. And when I say that, it's because I played a round by myself at Taconic in August of 2020 on a Saturday evening. And it was this just moment. I love playing golf by myself. After all that talk about other people, I love meeting new people. I love meeting people and playing with them. And then, that's it. Like, you spend 4 or 5 hours with them and you chat with them, but you were just paired randomly together. And that's kind of the end of the time your lives cross paths. And I think that's really amazing about golf too. But there is something also great about playing a round of golf alone. And I did it a lot as a kid. I did it a lot as a high schooler and a college kid. When I was in college, I was lucky enough to have a membership at Worcester Country Club, and I would love to get back there. I haven't been there in a very long time. And I would go and I would play 3 holes. I'd play 9 holes. I'd play 18 holes completely by myself. I am very comfortable being by myself, as this podcast is maybe starting to show. I could talk to a microphone, and that's completely fine. I'm a middle child, if anyone wants to psychoanalyze that part of my personality. But this round at Taconic, I called up, I made a tee time. They said, you can play at 4:00. It's a semi-private place. So they've got membership. They've got people that they've got to honor tee times for. My wife and I started going to Williamstown during COVID because it was as far away from Boston as you could go without crossing the border, which we couldn't really do. And we just kind of fell in love with that part of the state and with that specific town. And I brought my golf clubs in August and called up 4 days in advance, made my tee time, and Tiff and I got there early. We sat on the patio. It was really quiet. I was wondering, is anyone going to be here to play with, or am I going to play by myself? And Tiff probably could have walked with me, and she decided she was going to go kind of wander through town and check out the shops and let me go for a solo walk. So that's what I did. And Taconic is a place that I have only played twice, and for whatever reason, golf courses can do this to you. It just is a place that I adored, and I'm not sure 100% if it was because that first experience I got to see it by myself. The second time I played with other people, and they were lovely, and I really enjoyed it. And one of them we've kept in touch with, and I'd love to go back and play it again. But to see this golf course as the sun is setting on an August evening, the weather was perfect, and it just brought me back to a lot of the things that I loved about golf and do love about golf. The fact that you can play it with people, you can play it by yourself and still feel like there are people there with you. I lost my dad almost 10 years ago, and his anniversary is coming up in June. He died in June of 2014, and my dad and I played a lot of golf together. We learned to play golf together, and many of our rounds were finishing at twilight, and that is not a exception to father-son golf, and I know that. But for me, it is that time of day where it just feels like he is there, to be kind of nerdy about it and maybe a little spiritual about it, but it just, he crosses my mind every time I'm on a golf course. And his presence is felt way more on those twilight walks, down the back 9, down those back 3 or 4 holes, and playing Taconic alone felt like he was there a little bit with me. I think that's part of it. And there's been plenty of other rounds where I felt that too. And, but just that round, that playing a new place, knowing it was really great, and then kind of it meeting expectations, and the experience of being by myself is definitely a top highlight, and one of those moments that just makes me appreciate what is so great about golf. And that brings me to an honorable mention, which has to do with playing alone and together, a blending of my last 2 points here. And that is, and I kind of wish in some ways that Tiff might have walked some of those holes at Taconic with me. But we went to Pinehurst in 2022, and just after the U.S. Open. So I kind of, U.S. Open finished on Sunday. I got in my car on Monday and started driving down to Pinehurst and picked her up at the airport on my way down, because she was on a work trip. But that's beside the point. When we were at Pinehurst, I played a few rounds where I was paired with people, and then we got to, I went and played Pinehurst number 2. I was not going to go to Pinehurst and not play Pinehurst number 2. and we teed off. I teed off with 3 guys who I did not know. I was a solo golfer at Pinehurst. Highly recommend anybody do this. I think sometimes everyone thinks you have to have a bunch of guys with you. You can absolutely go to some of these places by yourself. You'll meet interesting people. You'll play great golf, and maybe you can kind of start something with your buddies because you have done a trip like this. So Tiff and I were down there, and Tiff asked, can I walk along with the group? And they said, sure. And they asked, do you want a golf cart? She said, no, I'm just going to walk. She had her coffee. And that was a really, really neat experience. It was a Christmas gift from Tiff to me that Christmas before. Complete surprise, out of the blue, had no idea. She just simply Googled, best golf resorts for something like non-golfing spouses, or looking for a place where she could go as a non-golfer and not feel like she's in the middle of nowhere. I'm not sure, I've never been to Bandon Dunes, but I don't think Bandon Dunes comes up on a list like that. So we walked the entire 18 holes together. It was just a really, really cool thing to do. I have memories of my mom and dad walking golf courses together, in his last few years when he had no one to play with, and my mom would just join him without golf clubs, and it was their evening walk, which is kind of a lovely thing to picture. So that walk with Tiff, and then the other one, which is kind of similar as a golfing highlight that I have from the last few years. We went to Scotland and we spent a day in Elie, got our fish and chips, wandered the tiny little beach town. And it was, I don't think I've played in windier weather ever. It was incredibly windy. And Tiff joined me for the first 7 holes and decided that was all she needed. So I got kind of like a cool mix of walking a bunch of holes with her and her seeing like Scottish golf, which is very different from the golf that she's played over here when she's played in corporate stuff or walking Pinehurst. Elie is truly a great links golf course. And she got to see it in this just wind blasted. It was like 40 miles an hour. It was incredible. I had a blast. And then to get she walked the last couple holes with me too. She walked back out and met me as I played 17 and 18. So to get this kind of middle 9 holes, just to walk the golf course and again, just be on a golf course alone, is something that's really special. And that's, I think, what I love about golf. And that's what is, reinforced every time I play a golf course, driving to all these different parts of the state and meeting people from different parts of the state who are incredibly proud of the golf course that they play every day, or maybe a little bit ashamed of parts of it, or trying to figure out like, who's this guy who's going to maybe write about the golf course, or some of them seem to think I'm going to write about them. So, meeting all these different people, driving to all these little pockets of the state that I had never been to, would have never a reason to go to other than playing a round of golf, is kind of neat. And it kind of, I think there's people like Tom Coyne who have have done these types of things all over the country, and he's written about it, and he gets to see swaths of the country that he would never go to and meet people that he would never meet through the game. So, I thank you, Kent, for asking this question. I had never really thought about the highlights and just the moments and the things that came from this and are coming and hopefully down the pike as more and more people kind of join me on this quest, whether they're just following along here or on Instagram or on my website and reading about these different places I'm playing. It's been kind of a cool, especially the last few months, just a bit of a wave of new people hopping on and joining, which is really exciting, a little bit nerve-wracking. More people to disappoint and more people to bring some joy to, and hopefully more people to meet and play golf with over the next, for the lifetime. It doesn't have to be during this quest, but kind of beyond that. So that's kind of all I have as far as this episode. And next week we'll see what's in store. I got a bunch of questions in the hopper from folks who posed them when Kent did as well on the Q&A request that I gave. So some short answer ones that might be, good to just pile in on one. But once again, please subscribe, please rate, review. Those things always help. If you're on YouTube right now, please subscribe on YouTube. This is a burgeoning channel on the YouTube side, and hoping to put all these podcasts, whether it's just me talking into the camera or sometimes adding a little bit of video when I have time to, and just kind of building it out and giving people some of the stuff. I have all these pictures and all this video of golf courses, and want to share them in as many different ways and interesting ways and thoughtful ways as I can with all of you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for following along. Have a great weekend, or have a great day wherever you are listening to this. And we will see you next time.